Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining the AEBG TAP webinar review of the annual plan. Our presenters today are Neil Kelly from the AEBG office and Greg Hill from West Ed. And without any further ado and no more technical problems, I'm going to hand this off to Neil and Greg.
Okay, well, welcome everyone, and I'll bring Greg Hill in from West Ed. So welcome, Greg. We only have a few amount of slides, so we have plenty of time for questions, and I know you have questions like, when can I submit my annual plan? When can I start putting things in? Or there's things in my plan that I didn't want in my plan. So Greg is here to answer all those technical questions. And if you have additional questions, just type them in the chat feature, like always, and we'll get started. The agenda today, we'll just quickly go over the basics and the framework, and then Greg will talk about, how to access the annual plan, how to submit it, how to complete it. I know some of you have had some questions. And then I'll go over the general assurances. Greg will talk about the fact sheet. I'll give you an update on the fiscal system that's coming on this fall, and then we'll open it up for questions, and we'll stay on the line till 1:30 and answer almost all your questions. I don't anticipate this webinar taking the full hour, so we'll have at least a half an hour or more to answer questions. Greg, any comments before we get started?
No, I think you covered it nicely, yeah.
Okay, here we go. Let's see, just the basics. Template came out in June. There's been 3 revisions. The most current one on the website and in the portal as of June 12th. So you've had a finished product for quite a while. The plan is due on Tuesday. It's submitted into the portal, so you need a password to get in the portal, and the consortium director is the one that's certifying for everyone. And it's basically narrative, big picture. We're going to take the strategies that you put in, and that will drive the budgeting for 16, 17, 17, 18. And I'll get into that a little bit later as far as the formatting of that new fiscal system and how that ties in to the annual plan. So any questions about that? Because we're moving on to the next slide. We want to get to the good stuff. The framework. It starts with the law, the AB 104 legislation. Then you had to do a 3-year plan. This is the last year of the 3-year plan. And each year, based on that 3-year plan, you do an annual plan. And that annual plan drives your expenditures and your budget. So the annual plan template is a Word document on the AEBG website. It's also a template in the portal that you can complete individually from your consortium, because it's populated with information specifically from your consortium. Your consortia lead must have access to the portal, meaning a password, and we're limiting the portal access to 2 individuals or 2 passwords per consortia. So don't be confused that this isn't the fiscal system. This is the portal, which has the CFAD, the annual plan document, the 3-year plan, the governance plan, and consortia member information. Okay, so with that, I'm going to turn it to Greg, but any questions about just the basics on the annual plan, kind of the framework, why do we fill out an annual plan, the purpose? Otherwise, we'll have Greg launch into specifics on submission, completion, those kind of things, access. Okay, Greg, go ahead.
All right. Well, thank you, Neil. Hi, everybody. I hope you're doing well on this fine Friday, early afternoon. So we're going to go over just a couple quick, go over a couple slides just to, remind everybody how to get to the annual plan. Most of you probably already know this, and from what we're able to tell, most of you have at least started your annual plan. But just in case, the way that you access it is by navigating to the AEBG website, aebg.cccco.edu, and on the home page there's the portal login link. Click that, and then enter in your credentials. If you don't have credentials to log in, then be sure to reach out to us, and we'll work on that. One quick note: please don't. You want to make sure, if possible, especially right now as we're getting close to the deadline for submission, that if you feel like you should have access but don't, to first please coordinate with your consortium leads to find out whether, who actually has access to the portal, if anybody, before you put in the request. We get lots of extraneous requests from folks who misunderstand the use of the portal, and right now, just as a reminder, it really is, intended to be the mechanism whereby everybody can submit reports, and not necessarily the place where everybody collaborates to plan on those reports. So, at any rate, moving forward, once you log into the portal, there's a link up top that says something along the lines of, reports. You want to click on that. You'll get a drop-down menu there, and then you'll want to say submit your reports, and then in the page that follows, click the link for Consortium Annual Plan. There are a handful of sections in the annual plan. Most of you are already familiar with it. We'll just quickly go through. The first section pertains to there's a section around executive summary, which you just provide a high-level summary of all the activities you have planned. In addition, you should also be looking to provide some, identify some of the challenges that you've encountered, etc., in the previous year, looking as you were working to execute on your previous year's plan. The second section asks for you to identify areas of need, basically gaps that you want to work to address in the coming year. And then the following sections ask you to respond to your previous year's strategies, identifying to what extent they've been implemented, what challenges you faced, what additional, plans, or if there are any additional activities that you have plans related to them, as well as any support that you would like to receive from the state. Following that, you are also asked for each objective to provide at least one core activity that you intend to execute on in the 17-18 year. It's really important here that you are able to have really have smart goals, strong goals that are measurable, and that all of your local plans can align to. The reason for this is as we transition to the new fiscal system, as well as new reporting system, ultimately members will be asked to report against those primary consortium objectives or activities rather, and so as you conduct your work, you want to make sure that they are sufficiently detailed to be able to measure, but also defined such that your members are able to see their work within them. And then lastly, there's a small section on fiscal, on your consortium finance, just basically how much funding have you expended thus far for the last 2 years, and a few questions around that, followed by certification of general assurances. And so this is just a quick view of what that section looks like. I believe the next slide actually is about general effectiveness. Neil, did you want to talk through these?
I just wanted to remind people that when they are going through their annual plan process and they do certify the general assurances, this is assuring your effectiveness. So right now, the only way we have recourse to reduce funding of a member, or a consortia has the ability to reduce funding of a member, is either the member chooses not to participate or can't do what was developed by the consortia as in the 3-year plan or the annual plan. And then the last part is they're ineffective and reasonable intervention has not been helpful. So I wanted to remind everyone that when they sign these annual plans and submit them, everyone's on the hook at the consortia level and the member level for the requirements for the AEBG program. So at the consortia level, we have things like evaluation, funding, governance, and collaboration, membership, planning, and reporting. Those are big ticket items. More specifically, I'm going to go to the next slide. At the member level, the members have to participate in the planning process. That means they have to be involved in the annual planning process. They have to be involved in the 3-year planning process. They have to be spending money in the 7 program areas. They must participate in public meetings and decision making. So if you have a member that's not showing up, or if you're not holding public meetings, you're going to be out of compliance, and we could reduce your funds, or the consortium might choose to reduce the members' funds if they fail to show up. If you're not reporting your data into TOPS Pro Enterprise, we'll reduce your funding. I mean, those kind of things. If you're not reporting your fiscal expenditure information timely. So there's a lot of things, why we have you sign that general assurances, so we, have some kind of recourse to come back if you're not meeting those requirements. And finally, providing services that address the needs identified in the plan, of course. We mentioned that in the call. So let's see if there's, Greg, let's see if there's any questions, because I'm kind of just done on the soapbox there. I mean, the last slide, this is the one, the legislation that talks about member reduction in funding, and I highlighted in bold the last one about member ineffectiveness. But realistically, let's see if we have any questions. I don't know, Greg, did you notice any questions there?
So not in the chat, but I do, there are a number of frequently asked questions that I could probably preempt, but maybe let's pause there to see if there are specifically questions around the reduction in funding or the general assurances, because that's
I know
pretty important.
Kristen had a question about additional logons, and I think the portal is pretty much set on just 2 passwords per consortium, correct?
Yeah, and so that's exactly right. So I mean, everyone, if we had our druthers, probably we'd really prefer to limit it to 1. But we do have up to 2, and just opening it up really does create challenges with regard to ensuring that your data remains okay. It's basically what we find happens when you've got more than one person logged in, especially if they're working on a form. It's not like Google Docs. It's really, these are static forms that you complete and then submit. And because the relationships are based around the objects in the portal are based on relations to the consortium, depending on how a particular report or whatnot was configured, you can have scenarios where one person started an annual plan with their login, while another person also started an annual plan with their login. And so that kind of can create a bit of a challenge. But okay.
Yeah, I can take that one from Amy.
There's an important question for you, Neil.
Right. Okay, so what I would advise you, Amy, is first to, if you have a member that is not participating or not participating in the planning process, at your next meeting, I would review your bylaws and your governance plan and make sure everyone's aware of that, and point out that you have to participate in the planning process. And then if they continue not to participate, then I would contact AEBG TAP for some technical assistance so we can document that and maybe go over the program guidance, and we can provide a little TA for that individual member. And then if that doesn't work, at least we've documented that, you know, it's something in your bylaws, it's in your governance, you've addressed it at the meetings, we've brought in some a reasonable intervention with AEBG TAP, and all that has failed, then based on the legislation, we would consider that reasonable. And so then you guys could vote to reduce funding if, you know, based on all those stages or steps that we've taken to help that member, they've still failed to comply. And so then you would have recourse, you know, at a future meeting to discuss that and see if you really wanted to reduce funding. Now, hopefully that answered your question, Amy. And then Eileen says, how about when a member continues to have carryover funds? Well, carryover funds is not a out of compliance situation. If they were not reporting their fiscal, if they were not giving you expenditure information, sharing it with the members as required, then that could be an issue. But just having carryover funds would not be a compliance issue or a general assurance issue. Okay, and I think we answered Amy's question. And I think Eileen's typing. We'll see if there's a follow-up question. But Greg, if you want to continue on.
Sure. Okay. So one of the big questions we've been getting a lot is how do we submit the plan? So heretofore, the only option you had at the bottom of your annual plan form was the option to save. This was indeed purposeful. And was meant to intend premature submission, and primarily because you know, it's sort of a challenge to open a submission back up, open the form back up, and once you hit submit, a bunch of things start happening, and so we wanted to minimize the likelihood of that occurring when there was still a chance that changes could be made. And so it should be active now, but if not now, it'll be active shortly after the webinar. But once you've completed the sections, there'll be, and it's there now, there's a little checkbox near the bottom of the page that says something along the lines of, click here, you know, when you're ready to submit your form. Be sure that you have indeed completed the sections, followed all the instructions, and that you've signed digitally the little signature box. Once you click that, the save button will turn to submit button, and then you can click submit. It says here consortium leads will receive an email. That's not actually quite true. The individual who will receive an email will be the person the applicant, which is to say the person who's actually logged into the portal. Likewise, the AEBG office will get a ping letting folks know that it's ready for review. Once you click submit, you will not be able to edit the form any further. And so please do, you know, double check before hitting submit.
So Greg, let me ask you a question. So if I'm using someone else's password and I submit, I wouldn't get technically the reply. It would be the person associated with that password, correct?
That's correct. It would be the logged in user. And so, yeah, that's exactly right.
And Janet just submitted.
All right. Congratulations, Janet. All right, let's see. Hey. Ah, yes. Okay. So, one of the... I'm going to come back. You can always hit save. As long as you don't click that little checkbox that says I'm ready to submit, you can just keep saving. And so I'm going to try to preempt a couple questions. Some of the input we've been getting is folks have been emailing us about, okay, there are activities listed that we don't recognize or that aren't correct, most likely due to like changes in the annual plan. and or the converse of that, which is we need to add an activity that isn't currently captured in the activities lists that are pre-populated in the form. So, just as a way of, just for context, the only activities that are going to be listed are those that were submitted in the initial submission of your last year's plan. So if you did make changes, we did not capture that digitally. That was done via that amendment process. And so, don't be alarmed if you're seeing things that you changed. It's okay. We can make those adjustments. What we would need you to do is just email us and say and just indicate what it is that you need changed, and we'll be happy to do that for you. One caveat, again, the only changes that we can make are changes that reflect an approved amendment, or just flat out wrong because it was an incorrect association with your previous submission. Please don't reach out because you want to rephrase it, or because for other reasons. Really, the intent of that section, of those sections, is to get you to think about what your initial planning activities were, and to then respond to them as a formative activity for planning the following year. So anyway, I think I covered that one okay. Let's see, I'm trying to think if there are other activities. So we have can submit wrong activities, populate all of the columns in the first. That's right. That is correct, Eileen. It's not, as a web form, unfortunately, it's not, you can't really copy and paste an entire row, for example, like in a spreadsheet. It really is kind of a click and paste into each cell. Thankfully, though, it actually goes pretty quickly, and it's pretty limited in terms of the things that you have to pre-populate, or you have to populate. So, it's unfortunately the best we can do right now. But if you really have challenges with it, let me know, and I'll be glad to help. Let's see, status showing up as submitted. Ooh, interesting. Okay, Kristen, I'll take a look. It also could depend on when that occurred. So, yep, that's probably possible. So let me look into it. But ultimately, we'll need to open it up for you. Oh, I know what it is. I do know what it is. Okay. So yeah, give us a bit, and we'll work on that. I'm actually thinking about it right now. All right. What other questions are there?
Any other submission questions for Greg?
Oh, that's a real, yeah.
We got a couple people
Greg,
typing
let me ask you a question. So Janet said she could submit, or did submit. Can anybody else submit today if they wanted to?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. I'm getting an email, Greg, that says, I am listening to your webinar as I copy and paste information from Word Annual Plan version 3, which looks like this. I have no idea what that means. So maybe you could look at it, Greg, when you get a chance.
Okay. And I'm actually going to have somebody take a look at that submission, the issue that Janet just pointed out. Yep, that's what I thought. Okay, yeah. I can reset it. Just ping me. We'll be sure to do it. I think the issue is... So if you're on the call right now, don't hit submit yet. Let us look into this one little issue. There it is. Okay. All right. Okay. Now it should work fine. Yeah, the issue was, so when you submit It should be once you click that button and then hit submit, it turns it to submitted, but there was a flag that was missing. We were doing some beta testing this morning and wanted to make sure that the email went out, and so that's what you're experiencing. So if it inadvertently locked you out, shoot me an email and I'll unlock it for you. And I'm sure that's probably terrifying for many of you. So don't worry, no one's going to evaluate it just yet. You're okay. Yes, thank you, Melinda. Ping means email. Yes.
Okay, Greg. And did you see Laura's email or Laura's question?
Oh yeah, just the answer is just go ahead and email me. But ghill@wested.org.
All right. Daryl has a long question for you.
There we go. So the answer is yes, but that wasn't going to occur until today. And so now that is what should happen.
So for those on the call that don't have access to the screen, Greg, what's the question that Daryl was referring to?
Oh. So the question that was asked is, will, upon submission of the annual plan, will there be some kind of notification, right, email notification? The answer is yes. But you weren't actually able to officially submit until today. And so you couldn't have. You would have just saved it. So following this call, as you submit, you'll actually get those emails, but you wouldn't have gotten that previously.
Okay, so hopefully everybody understands that starting today you can submit, and if you thought you submitted, you didn't.
Well, I think too, I know that there are a number of folks, and we did get a couple emails from folks who went through and, had signed and really finished all of the work. It would be, our recommendation that you just pop in one more time, click the button, and hit submit. But if for some reason you're having trouble doing that or whatnot, just let us know that it's been completed, and that as long as everything else is done, we can log it as closed. But you won't get the auto notification if you do that. So there is an.
And Greg, I just got an email from a listener that said they're driving in a car, so if we answer the chat, if we could read the question. So I think you're doing that now anyway.
Will do. Yeah, we'll try. We'll try to make sure that we remember to do that. That's a really good point. So thank you.
Okay. Do we want to move on to the next slide, or are there more people typing?
The chat is silent.
Okay. So let's move on to the fact sheets, Greg.
Okay. So I think at this point everybody's at least seen them, been able to do some, evaluation of them. Just high-level summary. Yes, we provided them as a way to help you plan, help you identify where gaps are, and is also as a way to kind of illustrate the work that you've done so far. We did get some questions around, mostly the questions that we're getting have to do with how the demographic data, where that comes from, how it's calculated, the percent of needs met, so the community of need. We've received a bunch of questions about that. And then there have been a handful of questions around the data itself, where folks aren't recognizing the data or aren't sure, like, hey, this doesn't look right to us, and or it looks like less or looks like more or whatnot. And so most of those questions we've addressed. as they've come in. But just as a high-level kind of summary, first, the demographic data up at the top of those fact sheets is actually from the funding formula that the AEBG office used to determine initial allocations. And so that data is pulled from ESRI as well as ACS 2015 5-year estimates. And I don't know, Neil, if you want to get into any granularity on that, but those were broken out by consortium area, and so those were the data.
Yeah, Greg. The only thing I would add is we're getting better data collection procedures this year. We're tightening up our systems for data collection. We're getting a new fiscal system. So you can see down the road, we'll be looking at performance, we'll be looking at need. I don't know if we'll be using the same demographic data to measure performance. I don't know. I mean, we've discussed this in the local level about, there's, in some cases 20,000 people that need a high school diploma. Are all of those really going to come into your school and ask to sign up for ASE? Probably not. So we've encouraged people to set up systems where they do know the student population that wants to take courses, and maybe because of financial reasons or transportation issues or childcare or other issues they can't attend. So you really know what the need is in the community, and that has to do with marketing and stuff like that. So the fact sheets are just kind of a snapshot. We did use this for the formula, so we don't want it to go to waste. But in hindsight, I think the student need locally, and you're looking at that on a regular basis, and you're probably doing some analysis and marketing to determine the capacity of your programs and who you need to serve and who might be coming in. So I wouldn't put too much into the fact sheets. Use it for a planning tool, but don't think we're going to use it for performance. Anything to add on that, Greg?
No, I think that's spot on. What we, again, we really just like in the AB 86, planning year, just wanted to be able to provide something that you could use to help with planning. And same thing with just thinking about the students served. The purpose of the data collection in the last year or two is really to kind of get our heads around the need, and to be able to do that in conjunction with all of you who are providing those services. And so what you're seeing in those enrollment counts reflect the best data that we could get through a combination of self-report and also through what's being reported to the state via Data Mart. And but one of the main challenges, as we all know, is that historically there really hasn't been a single system where each segment is using to report student progress, and so that creates a bit of a challenge. So these are absolutely estimates, and if they don't look right to you, great. Dig into it further, and we'll be glad to sort of help you identify and help explain how it is that we tried to define the population using MIS top codes and whatnot, as well as by combining again what was self-reported across the last few years. But if the fact sheets have prompted you to dig deeper into your own stores, then they were successful. But Anyway, so are there any questions on those?
Now, looks like we're good. Anybody typing, Melinda?
Okay.
Not that I can
Okay,
see.
well, we're going to move along. And we can come back to any of these subjects. So if like you're totally disregarding what we're saying right now because you're furiously typing into the annual plan template and something doesn't work, feel free to come back online and put in the chat and ask Greg a question. But we're going to continue on a couple more slides, and then we'll open it up for questions. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the new fiscal system and then put a plug in for the regional training coming up on the data collection. So sometime in October, we'll have a new fiscal accountability system replacing the Chancellor's Office MIS WebEx system. And we're still looking at, do we use the Chancellor's Office system to close out the last few months of 15-16 implementation money and then continue to use that for the data and accountability money since we just extended it 12 months to the end of 2018. So we would like to consider putting 16-17 and 17-18 on the new system. And the way the new system is going to work, it'll be member-based, but there will only be one report. So if you have 2 or 3 years of funding that are still active, you will only report once. And so we'll somehow identify that you're spending your carryover or you're spending your new money, but it'll only be entered into the system once. The downside to that is we do need members to log on and enter in their expenditure data quarterly, so that can roll up to the consortia level. And we realized that we could not tell how much indirect each member was charging, and we couldn't tell how much consortia admin, which is capped at 5%, consortias were charging. So this system will help us be more accountable with our AEBG funds and actually know what each member is doing with the fund. So more to follow on this, but I wanted to give you a heads up that we are working with a focus group of people around the state, some of our fiscal experts at the local level, to give input to help us make a better system. Okay, so Bethany says, our members have expressed concern about the amount of time they will need to spend entering info in the new fiscal system. Do you know approximately how much time this new requirement will take? So what will happen for each member once the annual plan is submitted? We will take your strategies, and each member will develop their own work plan based on those strategies. Now the work plan will be simply the consortia strategy and then a checkbox of what activities you will be doing to support that strategy based on your annual plan, which is based on the AEBG objective. So it kind of rolls up. So checking boxes, I don't see that as a big workload issue, and it's going to be standard, like I'm doing instruction, I'm doing supportive services, we're buying equipment, you know, those things, and there'll be a checkbox, not any narrative. So on the other side, for the expenses and budget, it'll just be their 1,000s through 7,000s, and they're indirect, and they will put in their budget, and then quarterly they will put in their expenses. And I think everyone does this anyway. So I don't see it being any more of a workload issue than it is now. Okay, so hopefully I answered Bethany's question. Janet says, will we still be reporting by program and objective on the new report? Not with the fiscal information. So your budget and expenses will only be by object code, and the work plan will be based on your annual plan strategies, but you will not have to report any fiscal information related to your work plan. Does that make sense, Janet? And then Q says, Neil, will training be provided on how to use the system? Yes, we'll be rolling out training in the fall, probably October, November. And we'll do regional training as well as webinars and things like that. We're still developing the prototype, so we haven't developed the training schedule yet. Okay, and Jacques says, what is the impact of the new system on budget revisions? Will revisions be done by members rather than by consortia now? That's a good question, Jacques. We are asking in our focus groups if a revision should have some criteria, like if it's less than 15 or 20%, can the member approve it? If it's more than that, should the consortia director approve it? The feedback we're getting is because financially CFOs and CBOs approve this, and at the consortia level, they don't really have the CFO, CBO, unless the consortia director has hired someone to act in that capacity. I mean, we're looking at keeping that at the member level because they do have a financial officer at the district office that's responsible. But then conversely, at the consortia level, they have that 5% admin, and so you can hire somebody, you can do a single audit or bring in an auditor at the consortia level in order to be comfortable with what members are submitting. So that 5% can be utilized for that, but that's your decision at the consortia level, and we don't want to dictate that. I mean, that's up to the members on how they want to be comfortable with what all the members are submitting. So we're working through that, Jacques, and I think we want to keep it to the lowest common denominator. We don't want to make it too bureaucratic. So we'll continue to listen to feedback, and we'll keep you abreast of what gets decided on that. Okay, and Amy says, once the info from members is in the system, will the info be shared to the consortia leads? Yeah, so all information within the consortium is viewable, and so we'll allow the consortia directors to have access to view member information. We're still working out the controls as far as what the consortia directors are responsible for and what the members are responsible for, kind of like that budget revision question. But there will be probably a certification at the member level, and then there will be some overall consortia certification, things were submitted. Okay. So any additional questions? I think I have one more slide on this. I mean, kind of here's an infographic on it. But I want to just make sure that we're not putting more work on you. We're just making it easier to find out what's happening with the money. So the fact that for activities we're using like a menu or a checkbox that feeds up to your strategies, that feeds up to the state objectives, it just makes it easier for everyone to know what's happening. And I don't think it's a big workload issue for the members to be checking boxes based on the strategies. And I think that makes it simple for everyone. Okay. So here are the benefits, accountable to the member level. We're only using object codes for reporting of expenditures and budgets. So like Janet was asking, we won't be tying this to program and objectives, the money. It gives the members abilities to list what activities, and they'll be standardized so we can roll this up either at the consortia level or at the state level. We can also bring in performance data to compare, the member has spent this much in these areas, and they're also offering these classes, and here are their outcomes. So it allows us to do better analytics and streamline and standardize our data collection. So any questions about that? I guess we're at the end. So I'm going to give a little plug out, a shout out since we have time. So starting next Thursday at Mount Diablo in Contra Costa County, that's in Concord, California, we're kicking off the 1718 Data and Accountability Regional Training. So if some of you have not read the new AEBG Data and Accountability Report to the Legislature, that has a wide variety of changes for 1718 in data collection and how we're spending or restrictions on spending. So I suggest you attend one of these face-to-face trainings. Jay Wright and I will be recording a shortened webinar next Friday as well from 12 to 1:30. It won't do it justice because I just finished the slides with Jay and there's 117 slides. So the webinar next Friday will probably be like 40 slides. So in order to do this justice and hear about all the changes, I suggest you plan to attend one of the face-to-face trainings. Some of the highlights might be we're not doing touch by AEBG with the funding. We're tracking by program area. And we're tracking only non-credit community college coursework in those program areas for AEBG. K-12 kind of stays the same because they don't have the programmatic issues like the colleges do. Everyone still will report into TOPS Pro Enterprise in 1718, but we are making modifications to allow existing systems to come into play in 1819. And we're also opening up some flexibility on measurable skill gain in the area of CTE and other areas. So I would encourage you to attend the training and tell people, faculty, teachers, coordinators, data people, IT people, that they should either listen to the webinar or try to attend a face-to-face training. Okay. So Belinda just posted the report to the legislature. And I'm going to turn it back over to Greg because we're going to switch hats. And we're going to put our annual plan hat back on and let Greg answer some questions. But first, I do have one last question from Jacques. Do the changes outlined in the report need to be approved by the legislature, or does the AEBG office authorize the changes? So drum roll, please. The AEBG office authorizes the changes, so these are effective immediately. Hope that answers your question, Jacques. Okay, Greg, take it away.
Okay, so thank you. I think that's about it. While we were sort of finishing up the webinar, those of you who had expressed that you were locked out, we've reset your access, so you should be all set now. Are there any other questions around the annual plan, or they can be technical or they could be conceptual, so either way is fine. Hey, thanks, Kristen. Nice. I haven't forgotten about you, John. I'm still working on that issue you emailed me about. Separate issue, but.
And while we're waiting for questions to come in, I'm just going to pop in here real quick and remind everybody to please stay in the room. Don't leave. As soon as we end the meeting, you'll be taken to a page that will take you to the evaluation. So just hang tight, and we'll be ending soon, it looks like.
Okay, and Lucy had a quick question. She said, how long is a quarter? And I'm assuming that's related to the fiscal reporting. And so in the new system, a quarter will be the 3-month period. So we'll be going back to 4 quarters of reporting in the new system, because that's the feedback we're getting from the locals and the members, that it's too hard to stay on top of fiscal reporting when the reports are only every 6 months. So that's the feedback we got from the field on that one.
You know, also there's in the chat there's a question about who to reach out to. You know, the questions with regard to the annual plan, and yes, please do email tap@aebg.org. But in addition, if you want to just sort of save everybody a little time, if you include my email address in that to field, we'll be able to route it accordingly. It's important that those emails also go to the TAP email address, as they're helping us, you know, track and, you know, frankly, you know, the larger, they need to be able to sort of understand in general the amount of kind of TA that happens around this kind of activity, and so it really is important for our analytics that you send that information, that you do email it to them as well. But don't hesitate to reach out directly to me, but again, just keep them informed too.
Greg, did you see the question from Kelly?
Yes, I'm seeing it now. So it says you're having difficulty to get it to print to PDF. So what you want to do is use, so there are 2 ways you can print a web, and really only one is going to work. What you want to do is in the upper right hand corner of the plan, you want to click the print button. From there you'll have options to, you know, print a PDF or save to PDF. What you don't want to do is try to use your browser's function for that. The browser's printer is going to organize the entire page, and what you're trying to do is print just the form. And so try that. If you find that you're having trouble, you know, try logging out and logging back in again, and then hitting print. If you continue to have trouble, you know, feel free to reach out, and we'll just print it out for you. In the end, that's what we're going to do. So, well, I encourage you to, yes, print a PDF before you submit or upon submission. You know, we will eventually post PDFs to the site. So.
Right, and Greg, there are a few people that are waiting for your help, and I think you're already working with people like Trudy and Kristen and a few other ones, correct?
That's right. Yeah, there are a couple folks we have some open loops on. Executive summary, you know, and that does sometimes happen. We have a question from Vivian. She says when she hits print, it's only showing a part of the executive summary. Try logging out and logging back in, and trying it again. And alternately, you could change the layout to landscape. That's an issue that we've encountered before. And we resolved it, or we should have resolved it. And so if you're experiencing it now, okay, you're still getting an error, okay. Okay, Kelly, let me look into it. We'll have some folks get into it and then see what we can do to get back to you. Yeah, that's exactly right. Trudy is right. One of the things you can do is you can actually, for any of the large text boxes, in the lower right-hand corner, there are 3 small lines that if you click and drag, you can expand the text box. And that's useful for both as you're entering in information as well as when you're looking to print it.
Okay, it's 1 o'clock. We still have time for additional questions.
And actually, while we're waiting, Vivian and Kelly, please do email me so that I can get it into our queue to address those issues, if you haven't already.
And since we do have some time, I'll throw out there for members that are on the line in our new fiscal system on that budget revision question that Janet had. Where should the approval of budget revisions be in this new fiscal system? Should it be the members' CDO? Or should it be at the consortia directors level? And I think sometimes don't you have to go to board approval for certain budget revision items or moving money around? So think about that, and I'll be open to any comments or suggestions in the chat. Right, so Jody says at the consortia level to foster transparency. So I appreciate that comment. We need to have some way of everyone knowing that they are revising their budget. And so Jody, maybe instead of an approval, do we have the ability for everyone to know that a member is revising their budget? Okay, and then Daryl said, this is related to the annual plan. How do I delete an entry in the first column of the leveraging resources table? Is there a way to add an additional row to a table? So that's a great question.
So if there are activities that are missing in the update tables under leveraging activities, or if there are extraneous ones, email us and give us the exact, the exact one that you want either modified or removed. Again, just echoing earlier, we really only want to make changes that bring what's currently in the annual plan, status update tables, to just bring them current to what your plan is, or if or again, if there was just some other kind of error. If it's if it's not essential, then we really don't want to be making those types of changes.
Okay, and I'm getting good feedback from everyone on the budget revision. Okay, any last questions or responses or comments? I would like to thank Greg for his expertise in the annual plan and portal area. I'd like to thank Melinda for the technical assistance today and making sure you can hear my voice. And I'd like to thank Daryl for keeping me level-headed. If I missed anybody, I apologize.
And I'd also like to thank Neil. If anyone has any questions, just a reminder that you can email us at tap@aebg.org. You can also submit questions on the AEBG site through the Contact Us. And we have a new 800 number, well, 888 number. It's TAP AEBG or 888-827-2324. And with that, everybody have a great weekend and a good lunch.